The transport ship shook hard as it entered the atmosphere of Keller 7. Inside the cramped hold, 40 human soldiers gripped their harnesses and waited. They had been told nothing about their mission, except that they would be fighting alongside alien warriors. Nobody knew what to expect. Sergeant Marcus Cole looked at his squad. They were young, most of them barely out of basic training. He had been fighting wars for 15 years, but even he felt nervous. The Galactic Council had never asked humans to fight with aliens before. Humans were new to space. They were still learning their place among the stars. The ship landed with a heavy thump. The back ramp dropped and bright light flooded in. Marcus blinked and stepped forward. What he saw made him stop. Standing in rows were the Vraxi warriors. They were tall, almost 8 feet, with blue-gray skin that looked like stone. Their eyes were solid black, and their faces showed no expression. Each one wore armor that covered their entire body, and they carried weapons that looked like curved swords made of light. A Vraxi stepped forward. He was even taller than the others, and scars covered his arms. When he spoke, his voice was deep and cold. "I am War Leader Korth," he said. "You are the humans." Marcus saluted. "Sergeant Marcus Cole, Earth Defense Force. We are here to fight." Korth looked at the humans with what might have been doubt. "You are small. Your bodies are soft. The Skrell will destroy you quickly." Some of the human soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Private James Chen whispered to the soldier next to him, "Nice welcome." Marcus kept his face calm. "We may be small, but we do not die easily. Give us a chance to prove ourselves." Korth stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away. "Follow. The battle begins at dawn." The humans were given a small building at the edge of the Vraxi camp. It was cold and empty, with only hard floors to sleep on. The Vraxi ignored them completely. When human soldiers tried to speak with them, the aliens simply walked past as if they were not there. "They think we are worthless," said Private Sarah Kim. She was cleaning her rifle, her movements angry. "They do not want us here." "Can you blame them?" Marcus sat against the wall. "They have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have only been in space for 50 years. To them, we are children." "Children with guns," said James. "I bet we surprise them." Marcus hoped he was right. That night Marcus could not sleep. He walked through the camp and found a place where he could see the stars. The sky here was different from Earth. The stars were brighter closer. He felt very far from home. A sound behind him made him turn. Korth was standing there watching him. "You do not sleep," the war leader said. "Neither do you." Korth moved to stand beside him. For a moment neither spoke. Then Korth said, "My warriors do not trust your kind. They believe humans are too weak for war." "And what do you believe?" Korth was quiet for a long time. "I believe that true warriors are not measured by the size of their bodies. They are measured by the strength of their spirits, but I have not yet seen your spirit." "You will see it tomorrow." Korth looked at him with those black eyes. "We will see." Dawn came quickly. The Vraxi assembled their forces in perfect silence. There were 200 of them, all wearing the same stone-gray armor. The humans looked very different with their green uniforms and metal helmets. Korth explained the mission. The Skrell had built a fortress on the other side of the valley. Inside that fortress was a weapon that could destroy entire cities. The Vraxi had tried to attack it twice before and failed both times. Many warriors had died. "The Skrell are not like us," Korth said. "They feel no fear. They feel no pain. They will fight until every one of them is dead. Do not expect them to surrender." The march to the fortress took half the day. The land was rough, covered with sharp rocks and deep holes. The Vraxi moved easily over it, but the humans struggled. By the time they reached the attack position, many of the soldiers were tired and scratched from falls. The fortress stood on a hill. It was made of black metal, with towers at each corner. Marcus could see Skrell guards walking on the walls. They were tall creatures with 4 arms and heads like insects. "We will attack from the front," Korth said. "My warriors will break through the gates. You humans will follow and provide support." Marcus frowned. "If we attack from the front only, we will lose many soldiers. The Skrell will cut us down before we reach the gates." Korth's eyes narrowed. "Do you question my tactics?" "I am trying to help. Let some of my soldiers go around to the side. We are small and quick. We can climb the walls while you attack the front. We will open the gates from inside." Several Vraxi warriors laughed. The sound was harsh and ugly. One of them said, "The human thinks he can climb walls. He will fall and die before he reaches the top." But Korth raised his hand for silence. He looked at Marcus for a long moment. "You would risk your soldiers' lives on this plan." "We risk our lives no matter what we do. At least this way, we might actually win." Korth considered this. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well, take your climbers. If you fail, my warriors will avenge you." Marcus picked 10 of his best soldiers, including Sarah and James. They moved quietly around the edge of the valley while the main force prepared to attack. The ground was difficult, and they had to crawl through mud and thorns. But they made no sound. When they reached the side wall, Marcus looked up. It was very high, maybe 50 feet, but it was not smooth. There were cracks and handholds where the metal had aged and broken. "We climb," Marcus whispered. "Stay quiet, kill only if you must." They began to climb. The metal was cold and sharp. Sarah cut her hand on a rough edge but did not stop. James slipped twice but caught himself. Higher and higher they went, while below they could hear the sounds of battle beginning. The Vraxi were attacking. Marcus could hear their war cries and the sound of energy weapons firing. He climbed faster. They needed to reach the top before too many Vraxi died. Sarah reached the top first. She pulled herself over the edge and lay flat, looking for guards. She held up 2 fingers. 2 guards, both looking toward the main battle. Marcus climbed up beside her. In one smooth motion, they moved forward and took down both guards with their knives. No sound, no alarm. One by one, the human soldiers reached the top of the wall. They moved along it like shadows, killing guards quietly. The Skrell were so focused on the battle at the front gate that they never looked behind them. The gate controls were in a small building near the main entrance. James broke the lock while the others watched for enemies. Inside, the controls were strange, with symbols none of them understood. "Which one opens the gate?" Sarah asked. James looked at the panel. He thought about everything he had learned about alien technology. Then he pressed a large red button. The gates began to open. Below, the Vraxi warriors surged forward. They poured through the opening like a flood of gray stone. The Skrell tried to stop them but were overwhelmed. The battle inside the fortress was fierce but short. When it was over, Korth stood in the center of the fortress courtyard. Around him, the bodies of Skrell lay everywhere. He was wounded, with blood running down his arm, but he was alive. Marcus climbed down from the wall and walked toward him. The other humans followed. Korth looked at the open gates. Then he looked at Marcus. For the first time, something like respect appeared in his black eyes. "You opened the gates," he said. "We did. Many of my warriors are alive because of this. You saved them." Marcus nodded. "That is what we do. We fight together, we survive together." Korth was silent for a moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder. In Vraxi culture, this was a sign of brotherhood. It was something they only did with their closest warriors. "Perhaps," Korth said slowly, "we were wrong about humans." The Vraxi camp was different that night. For the first time, the alien warriors did not ignore the humans. They brought them food and shared their fires. Some even tried to speak with them, though the language barrier made it difficult. Private Chen found himself sitting next to a young Vraxi warrior named Toril. They could not understand each other's words, but they shared a meal together. Toro pointed to Chen's rifle and made a gesture of interest. Chen handed it to him, showing him how it worked. In return, Toro showed Chen his light sword. When activated, it hummed with energy and glowed bright blue. Chen's eyes went wide with wonder. Toro made a sound that might have been a laugh. Across the camp, similar scenes were happening. Humans and Vraxi, who had been strangers that morning, were now sharing stories of battle. They used gestures and drawings in the dirt to communicate. Somehow, they understood each other. Marcus sat with Korth near a large fire. The war leader had been treated for his wounds and now seemed thoughtful. "I have fought many battles," Korth said. "I have led warriors from many species, but I have never seen anyone fight like your soldiers fought today." "What do you mean?" "Your people are not strong like the Vraxi. You cannot see in the dark like the Zeth. You do not have armored skin like the Kar. And yet you climbed that wall. You killed without sound. You opened the gates when my warriors could not." Marcus shrugged. "We used what we had: speed, cleverness, teamwork." "Yes," Korth said, "teamwork. This is what I saw. Your soldiers moved as one creature. Each one knew what the others would do without speaking. They trusted each other completely. That is how we survive. Humans are not the strongest or the fastest. We learned long ago that we must work together or die." Korth nodded slowly. "This is a valuable thing, perhaps the most valuable thing in war." The next few weeks brought more battles. Each time the humans proved themselves valuable. They were scouts and climbers. They were quick thinkers who could solve problems in the middle of combat. The Vraxi began to rely on them. But it was not only their skills that earned respect, it was their spirit. In one battle, a Vraxi warrior named Vorith was trapped under a fallen building. The structure was burning and the fire was spreading quickly. The other Vraxi could not reach him. Their armor was too heavy and the space was too small. Sarah Kim did not hesitate. She crawled into the burning wreckage without any armor at all. She found Vorith, whose leg was pinned by a metal beam. She could not lift it alone. "James," she shouted, "Chen, get in here." The two soldiers followed her into the flames. Together, the three of them lifted the beam just enough for Vorith to pull his leg free. They dragged him out moments before the entire structure collapsed. Vorith could not believe what had happened. These small, soft creatures had risked their lives to save him. They had no reason to do so. They were not his family or his clan. They were strangers from another world. "Why?" he asked Sarah later. "His wounds had been treated and he would live. Why did you save me?" Sarah looked at him with confusion. "Because you needed help. What other reason is there?" Vorith had no answer, but from that day forward he stayed close to the human soldiers. He watched them, learned from them, and protected them in battle. He was not the only one. Many Vraxi warriors had similar experiences. They saw humans do things that seemed impossible or foolish. They saw them risk everything for each other and for allies they barely knew. Slowly, the Vraxi began to understand that there was more than one kind of strength. Korth called a meeting of his senior warriors. Marcus was invited, which was an honor no human had ever received. "The war is changing," Korth said. "The Skrell are gathering their forces for a major attack. Our scouts report that they have thousands of soldiers, many more than we do." "What is your plan?" asked one of the warriors. "We must defend the Valley Pass. If the Skrell get through, they will reach the civilian settlements. Millions will die." Marcus studied the map on the table. The pass was narrow, with high walls on both sides. It was a good place to defend, but the Skrell had more soldiers and better weapons. "We need to slow them down," Marcus said. "Give ourselves time to prepare." Korth nodded. "I agree, but how?" Marcus thought carefully. "What if we use small teams to attack their supply lines? If we can destroy their food and ammunition, they will have to stop and resupply. That could give us several days." "This is guerrilla warfare," Korth said. "Hit and run, it is not the Vraxi way." No offense, but the Vraxi way might get everyone killed. Sometimes you have to fight smart, not just fight hard. There was tension in the room. Some warriors looked angry at Marcus's words, but Korth raised his hand. The human speaks truth. We must adapt or die. He looked at Marcus with something like friendship. Will you lead these teams? I will. Give me half of the human soldiers and a few Vraxi who are willing to learn new ways of fighting. Korth smiled. It was a strange expression on his stone-like face. Vorith has asked to fight alongside the humans, so have several others. I believe you will have many volunteers. The next morning, Marcus stood before a mixed group of 20 soldiers. Half were human, half were Vraxi. They looked at each other with curiosity and perhaps for the first time with mutual respect. This will not be an easy mission, Marcus said. We will be behind enemy lines. We will be outnumbered at all times. We will have to trust each other completely, or we will die. He looked at each soldier in turn. I do not care if you are human or Vraxi. When we are out there, we are one team. We fight together, we bleed together, and if necessary, we die together. Is that understood? Yes, Sergeant, the humans shouted. The Vraxi were silent for a moment. Then Vorith stepped forward. He placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder just as Korth had done. We understand, he said. We are brothers now. One by one, the other Vraxi did the same. Each placed their hand on a human shoulder. Each spoke the word brother. Something powerful passed between them in that moment. They were no longer strangers from different worlds. They were soldiers who had chosen to stand together against the darkness. They marched out of the camp as the sun rose behind them. The war was about to enter a new phase, and nothing would ever be the same again. The guerrilla campaign began that same night. Marcus split his team into 4 groups, each with humans and Vraxi working together. They struck at the Skrell supply lines with speed and precision. The first target was a convoy carrying food and water. The team hit it hard and fast, destroying the vehicles and scattering the guards. They took only what they needed and left the rest burning. By the time Skrell reinforcements arrived, the attackers had vanished into the night. Private Chen and Vorith led the second strike. They found a Skrell ammunition depot hidden in a cave. Vorith provided covering fire while Chen planted explosives. When the depot exploded, it lit up the sky for miles around. Sarah and a Vraxi named Thala attacked a communication station. Sarah used her small size to squeeze through a ventilation shaft and disable the guards from inside. Thala then broke through the main door and destroyed the equipment. Without that station, the Skrell could not coordinate their forces effectively. Each attack slowed the enemy advance. The Skrell had to stop and reorganize. They had to wait for more supplies. Their generals argued about what to do. Days passed, and they made no progress toward the Valley Pass. But the campaign was not without cost. In one attack, 2 human soldiers were wounded badly. A Vraxi warrior named Kel died protecting them, holding off a group of Skrell while his human partners escaped. When the team returned to camp, they carried their fallen and wounded. The Vraxi performed their death ritual for Kel, chanting in their deep voices while his body was burned. The humans stood with them, heads bowed in respect. Vorith approached Marcus afterward. The big warrior's face was hard to read, but there was pain in his eyes. Kel was my friend since childhood, he said. We trained together. We fought together for many years. I am sorry for your loss, Marcus said. He died with great honor. Vorith nodded slowly. He died protecting your people, humans he had only known for a few weeks. He paused. I asked him once why he cared about humans so much. Do you know what he said? Marcus shook his head. He said that humans taught him something he had forgotten. He said they taught him that courage is not about being unafraid. It is about being afraid and fighting anyway. Vorith looked at Marcus with something new in his black eyes. I did not understand until today. Now I understand. As the days passed, the bonds between humans and Vraxi grew stronger. They shared meals and stories. They taught each other their languages. They learned each other's customs and beliefs. The humans discovered that Vraxi were not as cold and emotionless as they first appeared. They had deep feelings. They simply expressed them differently. When a Vraxi placed their hand on your shoulder, it meant more than a human hug. When a Vraxi shared food with you, they were welcoming you into their family. The Vraxi discovered that humans were not as weak as they first appeared. Their bodies were soft, yes, but their spirits were like iron. They could take terrible wounds and keep fighting. They could face death with laughter and jokes. They could lose everything and still hope for tomorrow. James Chen became particularly close with Toril, the young warrior he had met on the first night. Toril taught James the basics of light sword combat. James taught Toril how to use a rifle. They practiced together every day, each becoming better because of the other. "On my world," Toril said one evening, "we have a tradition. When two warriors fight together many times, they become more than friends. They become sword brothers. Their lives are bound together forever." "We have something similar," James said. "We call it having your battle buddy, someone who watches your back no matter what." Toril considered this. "You are my battle buddy, James Chen of Earth." James grinned. "And you are my sword brother, Toril of the Vraxi." They clasped hands in the way warriors do across the galaxy. Similar bonds formed throughout the camp. Sarah and Thala became inseparable after their mission together. They developed a system of hand signals that let them communicate silently in combat. They could tell what the other was thinking with just a glance. Marcus and Korth spent many hours discussing strategy and tactics. Their conversations evolved into something deeper. They talked about their homes, their families, their hopes, and their fears. They discovered that despite their physical differences, they had much in common. "I have a son," Korth said one night. "He is young, still learning to be a warrior. When this war is over, I want him to meet you and your soldiers." "Why?" "Because you have shown me a different way to fight, a way that values cleverness and cooperation as much as strength and courage. I want my son to learn this way." Marcus smiled. "And I want my soldiers to learn from the Vraxi. Your discipline and honor are things we can all benefit from." "Then we will teach each other," Korth said. "Our peoples will grow stronger together." The Skrell finally began their advance. The delays had cost them dearly, but they still had a massive army. Thousands of soldiers marched toward the Valley Pass. Korth prepared his defenses. The Vraxi built walls and set traps. The humans rigged explosives and set up ambush points. Everyone worked together with a unity that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. On the morning before the battle, Marcus addressed the combined forces. Humans and Vraxi stood together, no longer separated into different groups. They were one army now, one family of warriors. "I will not lie to you," Marcus said. "Tomorrow will be hard. Many of us will not survive. The Skrell are many and they feel no fear. They will not stop until they are all dead." He paused, looking at the faces before him. Some showed fear, some determination, some calm acceptance. All showed trust. "But I have seen what we can do when we fight together. I have seen humans save Vraxi and Vraxi die for humans. I have seen soldiers from different worlds become brothers and sisters in arms. The Skrell have numbers and weapons, but they do not have what we have." "What is that?" someone called out. "Each other," Marcus said simply. "We fight for each other. We protect each other. We give everything for each other. And that is something the Skrell will never understand." Korth stepped forward. "When I first saw the humans arrive, I thought they were useless. I thought they would die quickly and accomplish nothing." He turned to look at Marcus and the human soldiers. "I have never been more wrong about anything in my entire life." The Vraxi warriors murmured in surprise. Korth was not known for admitting mistakes. "These humans have taught me that size and strength are not everything. They have shown me courage that shames many warriors twice their size. They have saved my soldiers and earned their place at our side. Korth raised his fist. Tomorrow, we fight not as Vraxian humans, but as one people. We fight as brothers. The roar that followed shook the valley walls. That night nobody slept. The soldiers sat together in small groups, talking quietly and preparing for what was to come. Many wrote messages to loved ones back home. Some prayed to their gods. Others simply sat in silence, finding comfort in the presence of their comrades. Marcus found himself sitting with Chen, Sarah, James, and the Vraxi they had grown closest to. Vorith, Toril, Thala, and several others formed a circle around a small fire. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Marcus said, "I want you all to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life." "Do not talk like we are already dead," Sarah said with a small smile. "We have survived this long." "And we will survive tomorrow," Vorith added, "together." They clasped hands across the fire. Human and Vraxi, different in every way that could be measured, but the same in all the ways that mattered. They were soldiers. They were friends. They were family. The stars wheeled overhead as the night passed. Dawn was coming, and with it, the greatest test they would ever face. The Skrell attacked at first light. Their army filled the entrance to the valley like a black flood. Thousands of soldiers, each one a killing machine with 4 arms and armored skin. They marched in perfect formation, their weapons humming with deadly energy. The defenders waited behind their walls. Marcus stood with Korth at the center of the line. Around them, humans and Vraxi held their weapons ready. Fear was in every heart, but nobody showed it. "Hold your fire until my signal," Korth commanded. His voice carried across the battlefield through communication devices. "Let them come closer." The Skrell advanced steadily. Their commanders were confident. They had crushed many armies before. These mixed forces of aliens and soft creatures would fall like all the others. At 300 meters, Korth raised his sword. At 200 meters, he brought it down. Fire! The valley exploded with violence. Human rifles cracked and Vraxi energy weapons sang. Explosives planted in the ground erupted, sending Skrell soldiers flying. The first wave of attackers fell in heaps. But more came, always more. The Skrell cared nothing for their losses. They climbed over their fallen comrades and kept advancing. Their return fire slammed into the defensive walls, killing defenders and creating gaps in the line. "Chen, take your squad and shore up the left flank." Chen ran with Toril at his side. They found a section of wall that had been badly damaged. Skrell were already trying to climb through the gaps. Chen fired his rifle until it was empty, then drew his combat knife. Toril's light sword blazed as he cut down enemy after enemy. On the right flank, Sarah and Thala held a narrow passage. The Skrell came at them in waves, but they stood firm. Sarah was wounded in the arm but kept firing. Thala took a hit that would have killed a human but only slowed her down. Together, they made the Skrell pay for every inch of ground. The battle raged for hours. The sun rose higher and the heat became unbearable. The dead piled up on both sides. The defenders were pushed back step by step, but they never broke. Marcus found himself fighting hand-to-hand with a Skrell commander. The creature was huge and fast, its 4 arms attacking from multiple angles at once. Marcus dodged and ducked, looking for an opening. Vorith appeared from nowhere, his sword cutting through one of the Skrell's arms. The creature screamed and turned, giving Marcus the chance he needed. He drove his knife into the Skrell's neck, killing it instantly. "We are even now," Vorith said with a grim smile. "You saved my life in the first battle. I save yours in this one." "Let us hope we both live long enough to keep saving each other," Marcus replied. By midday, the situation was desperate. The defenders had been pushed back to their final line. Behind them was nothing but the path to the civilian settlements. If they fell, millions of innocent people would die. Korth called Marcus to his side. The war leader was wounded in many places, but still standing. "We cannot hold much longer," Korth said. "We need to do something unexpected or we are finished." Marcus looked at the battlefield. The Skrell had committed almost all their forces to the final push. Their rear lines were thin. An idea formed in his mind. "Give me 20 volunteers, humans and Vraxi together. We will go around and hit them from behind. If we can kill their commanders, the rest might become confused." "That is suicide," Korth said. "You will be surrounded and killed." "Maybe, but if it works, we win. If we do nothing, we definitely lose." Korth was silent for a long moment. Then he clasped Marcus's shoulder in the way of Vraxi brothers. "Go then, die well if you must, but try to live." Marcus gathered his team. Chen, Sarah, James, Vorith, Toril, Thala, and others who had become his closest companions. They all knew what they were being asked to do. None of them hesitated. They slipped away from the main battle, using every trick they had learned in the guerrilla campaign. They crawled through ravines and over rocks. They moved like shadows, unseen by the enemy focused on the front lines. The Skrell command post was located on a small hill behind the main army. It was guarded, but not heavily. The Skrell did not expect anyone to attack from behind. Marcus gave the signal. The team attacked with everything they had. The Skrell guards fell quickly, taken by surprise. The team pushed into the command post, fighting through corridors and rooms. Bodies piled up behind them, both Skrell and their own. James took a wound to his leg but kept fighting with Toril supporting him. Sarah and Thala fought back to back, covering each other against multiple attackers. Vorith went down with a Skrell blade in his shoulder, but Chen pulled him to safety and bandaged the wound. Marcus reached the main command center. Inside were 3 Skrell generals coordinating the entire attack. When they saw him, they drew their weapons. The fight was brief but brutal. Marcus took a deep cut to his side and a burn to his arm, but when it was over, all 3 generals were dead. Outside, the effect was immediate. Without their commanders, the Skrell forces became confused. Their coordinated attack fell apart. Units began acting independently, getting in each other's way. Korth saw his chance. He led a massive counterattack, throwing everything the defenders had left into one final push. The Vraxi warriors charged with their swords blazing. The humans followed, firing as they ran. The Skrell lines broke. It was not a clean victory. There was no sudden surrender, but slowly the enemy retreat became a rout. The survivors fled back the way they had come, leaving their dead behind. When the sun set that evening, the valley pass was still in friendly hands. Marcus sat against a rock, too tired and wounded to move. Medical staff were treating the wounded all around him. The sounds of suffering mixed with sounds of relief and even joy. Korth found him there. The war leader looked almost as bad as Marcus felt, but he was smiling. "We won," Korth said simply. "We did." Korth sat down beside him. For a while, neither spoke. They just watched their soldiers move around the battlefield, helping the wounded and honoring the dead. "I have fought in many wars," Korth said finally. "I have won many battles, but I have never felt anything like this. This victory means more than any other." "Why?" "Because we won it together. Vraxi and humans fighting as one. This is something new in the galaxy, something that has never happened before." Marcus nodded slowly. He thought of all the soldiers who had died today. He thought of the bonds that had formed between species that had been strangers weeks ago. He thought of what it all meant. "It does not have to end here," he said. "What we built on this planet, this brotherhood, we can spread it to others. Other species, other worlds. We can show them what is possible when different peoples work together." Korth considered this. It would be a long and difficult road. Many would resist. Many would not believe it possible. Many thought it was impossible for humans and Vraxi to fight together. We proved them wrong. A smile spread across Korth's scarred face. Yes, we did. They clasped hands in the way of brothers. The years that followed brought many changes. The Galactic Council, which had watched the war on Keller 7 with great interest, began a new program. Human and Vraxi soldiers were paired together in special units. These mixed teams were sent to conflict zones throughout the galaxy. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. The mixed teams combined the best qualities of both species. Human creativity and adaptability merged with Vraxi discipline and strength. They solved problems that neither species could solve alone. They won battles that others said were unwinnable. More importantly, they served as examples. Other species began to ask why they could not have similar partnerships. Slowly, the idea spread. Boundaries that had existed for thousands of years began to break down. Marcus was promoted to colonel and given command of the first multi-species combat brigade. His soldiers came from a dozen different worlds. They spoke different languages, had different customs, and looked nothing alike. But they were united by a common purpose and a shared commitment to each other. Korth retired from active combat but became an ambassador between the Vraxi and other species. He traveled the galaxy, telling the story of Keller 7. He spoke of the small, soft humans who had climbed walls and opened gates. He spoke of the brotherhood that had formed in the fires of war. The soldiers who had fought together at the Valley Pass became legends. Their names were remembered and celebrated. Songs were sung about their courage and their friendship. Chen and Toril remained sword brothers for the rest of their lives. They opened a training school together, teaching young warriors from many species how to fight as one. Thousands of soldiers passed through their doors, each one carrying the lessons of cooperation and trust to their own homes. Sarah and Thala became famous as a fighting team. They led special operations missions across the galaxy, always succeeding against impossible odds. Other soldiers called them the Twin Shadows because they could communicate without words and moved as one being. Voreth never forgot the debt he owed to the humans. He dedicated his life to building bridges between species. He married a human woman, one of the first such marriages in galactic history. Their children, who carried traits of both parents, became symbols of what was possible. On the 10th anniversary of the Battle of the Valley Pass, a reunion was held on Keller 7. Surviving veterans gathered from across the galaxy. They were older now, many of them scarred and gray, but when they saw each other, the years fell away. They were soldiers again, brothers and sisters in arms. Marcus stood before them, his hair white but his back still straight. 10 years ago, he said, we were strangers. We came from different worlds, different cultures, different ways of life. Many did not believe we could work together. Some did not want to try. He paused, looking at the faces before him. Human and Vraxi, and now many others. Each one had been touched by the bonds formed here a decade ago. But we proved them wrong. We proved that courage and honor know no species. We proved that trust and friendship can cross any boundary. We proved that when different peoples stand together, nothing is impossible. Korth stepped forward to stand beside him. The old war leader's voice was still strong. On my homeworld, he said, we have a saying, blood makes family but battle makes brothers. When I first heard these words, I thought they applied only to Vraxi. I was wrong. He turned to face the assembled veterans. You humans, you small and soft and stubborn humans, you taught us what brotherhood really means. It is not about blood or species or homeworld. It is about standing together when everything is dark. It is about fighting for each other when fighting seems useless. It is about loving your comrades more than you fear your enemies. The veterans began to cheer. Humans and Vraxi and others, all raising their voices together. Today, Korth continued, we are not just allies, we are not just friends, we are family, and that family will endure long after all of us are gone. The cheering grew louder. Soldiers embraced each other across the barriers of species and culture. Old friends reunited and new friendships began. As the sun set over Keller 7, Marcus and Korth stood together on a hill overlooking the gathering. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Marcus asked. Korth nodded. "I told you that humans were weak and would die quickly. And I told you to give us a chance to prove ourselves." They were both quiet for a moment, remembering all that had come since that day. The battles, the losses, the victories, the friendships that had grown from suspicion and doubt. "I think," Korth said finally, "that you proved yourselves very well." Marcus smiled. "We both did together." They clasped hands one more time, two old warriors who had become brothers. Below them, the next generation was learning the same lessons they had learned. Human and Vraxi and others, all finding ways to understand each other, to trust each other, to fight for each other. The galaxy was changing. The bonds formed in war were spreading into peace. Different species were working together in ways that had once seemed impossible, and it had all started here on this world with a handful of soldiers who had chosen to see past their differences. The story of Keller 7 would be told for generations. It would inspire countless others to reach across the boundaries that separated them. It would prove, again and again, that the strongest force in the universe was not weapons or armies or power. It was brotherhood. And that brotherhood, born in battle and forged in fire, would endure forever.